All right, we can go ahead and get started. Thank you so much to our panelists, our facilitator, and our audience for joining us this evening. My name is Miracle Santiago, and I'm the president of the Multicultural Student Solidarity Network, and I'm currently a junior majoring in sociology and leadership studies. We're very excited to dive into a conversation about what it's like to be both a multicultural student and an alum at the University of Richmond. We will start with introductions, then begin to address your pre-submitted questions in a casual round robin style. If you have any additional questions that come up throughout the session, please do feel free to submit those via the live Q&A feature, and we'll do our best to get to them. While we do wish that we were able to meet with one another and discuss in person, we look forward to developing additional ways to connect with our multicultural students and alumni moving forward. So I'd like to start by introducing our facilitator, Rashida Perry, class of 2003. Rashida currently serves as the Assistant Director of Internal Audit at Atlantic Union Bank. She is the founder and artistic director of Rebirth Arts, as well as the founder and chief consultant at Stewardship Consulting. Rashida is a member of the University of Richmond Alumni Association Board of Directors and the president of the University of Richmond Black Alumni Network, better known as URBAN. Thank you so much for joining us, Rashida. So I'll now briefly introduce our panelists. We have Jabron Heder, class of 2019, studied physics, computer science, and mathematics at UR. He is now living in Toronto and pursuing his PhD at the University of Toronto. Jade Hines Clark, class of 2020, played on the women's basketball team at UR while studying sociology and leadership. She is now enrolled in the Master of Sports Management program at VCU and serves as the Human Rights Coordinator for the City of Richmond, where she lives. Nigel Leben, who also graduated in 2019, she studied biochemistry and molecular biology with minors in Arabic and mathematics. She is now enrolled in the MD PhD program at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. Then we have Ivana Marshall, class of 2017, studied leadership and international studies at the University of Richmond. She now serves as the assistant director for alumni engagement and inclusion initiatives at William & Mary, where she is also pursuing a Master's of Higher Education Administration. Last but not least, I'd like to introduce Aransas Gordado, class of 2013. Aransas studied international and global studies at UR and now works as a senior consultant at Booz Allen Hamilton in Atlanta. So thank you guys all for being here tonight, and I will turn it over to Rashida, who will get us started.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and let's jump right into it. So my first question for our panelists, what does multicultural mean to you?
I can start if that's okay. So multicultural to me, it means the characterization of people from different ethnic and cultural groups, not merely coexisting, but also thriving together. And so it's not merely allowing the existence of a plurality of cultures and traditions, but also propagating healthy collaboration and contact between different cultures. It's the quality of ensuring that even a single person who belongs to a culture different from that of 99 others surrounding them does not sacrifice their identity. It does not feel even the need to sacrifice their identity. I think that to me is what multicultural is.
All right, I love that answer. Any other thoughts? Okay. Well, I'll go with this then. And keeping in mind whatever multicultural means to you, right? What challenges did you face at U of R identifying as a multicultural student? And what advice would you have for overcoming similar challenges for our current students?
I can jump in here for a minute. My name is Nejwa. I know we were introduced, but just so y'all can hear my name and see my face. So I am Lebanese. Actually, if I pan up, this is sitting in my room. So I'm Lebanese. Both my parents immigrated from Lebanon. My dad in his 20s, my mom when she was 30. And I mean, I've grown up in the United States, so I definitely identify as Arab American and Muslim American. And while I loved my time at UR, one thing that I did feel was missing, at least during the first few years, was a sense of camaraderie with like other Arab students, primarily because, at least as far as I was aware, I was like the only Middle Eastern person in my year, like my graduating class. And comparing that experience to my twin sister who went to a much larger state school, she had like, there was a Lebanese student association there, like really getting down to the nitty gritty. And it felt, I was like, oh shoot, like that would have been amazing. And one of the ways, Rashida, I know you asked, is like, how do you overcome that? I think part of it is like expanding your circle a little bit. And so I ended up becoming an RA, and through that actually ended up meeting some underclassmen who, like one of them was from Lebanon. I ended up meeting a few other like Arab students through the Muslim Student Association. I was able to branch out into like circles that I hadn't yet been introduced to. So just sort of keeping an open mind and maybe utilizing other avenues within the university community is a great way to sort of tap into some real gold mines as far as like camaraderie, community with people who share similar identity as you.
Going off that, I went to Richmond with the largest admission body since like for a decade. So we were the most diverse as well. So I definitely had that to my advantage. My sister went to Richmond as well, but she went to Richmond. When I was a freshman, she was a senior. So she didn't get the same experience that I did. I got to speak Spanish the entire time. I met friends like everywhere that I can still, you know, I could keep my language. But at the same time, I did what Nasha did. I joined a bunch of stuff. Like I did synchronized swimming. I was an ESL drill instructor for Spanish. I volunteered for after school stuff. And I just, you know, just did so much. Just so I was curious about this other culture and world as well, because I didn't grow up in the United States. I grew up in the Dominican Republic. And even that I'm American, I identify myself as Dominican because that's where I grew up, where I was raised, where I grew up. My first language is Spanish. So I definitely wanted to keep that going. And it helped me, obviously, having that diversity already in campus, but I know that things like that has changed. So I definitely encourage you guys to just join whatever you can that you're interested in and find that common ground with somebody else that might maybe not share your culture or your language, but you definitely share something that you can still connect with.
Yeah, if I could jump in there, one, thank you both for sharing. I think for me as a student athlete, I kind of already had that built-in network is what it felt like, but I wanted to be able to branch out from that. And I found that really important just to my identity freshman year. So like you both did, just trying to get involved with anything that I could, trying to figure out who I could talk to and, you know, how I could get in different spaces was really important. And I kind of felt like after, you know, I started branching out, that's when I could really talk about some things that maybe I didn't talk with some of my teammates about. My dad came to the States from Barbados when he was 13, and my mom came to the States from Jamaica when she was 11. And so I didn't really have those conversations initially with, you know, with my teammates as far as like, you know, being a first generation college student and how like that would shape some of my identity. So I think just really trying to branch out and get involved with people to have multiple different networks on campus was kind of like the most important thing to me in my identity.
All right, well, I think that's definitely great advice in order to expand your network just beyond what might immediately attract you to a particular group, but to find common ground on interests that you have. This is, I think, is always a tough question for any multicultural student at Richmond. I probably have talked to many students and many alumni about this topic over time, but to our panelists, did you feel welcome or as though you belonged, and were you valued and supported on campus? If not, what did you do about it?
That's definitely a tricky one. For example, I felt welcome. Probably because of diversity, but at the same time, I felt like my freshman year roommate, she was really curious, and I actually appreciated that a lot. And you can, I don't know if you guys can see my name like on the screen, but my name is a little hard, and she actually took the time from one of her friends back home that spoke Spanish to learn how to pronounce my name. So when I met her in person, she actually could say my name correctly, and that warmed my heart for sure because she really tried. And she's still one of my really good friends. And things like that are I definitely feel welcome. There's challenges for sure, like when, at least for international students as well, you miss home in so many ways, the food especially, but and the weather kind of depresses you when you come from like a tropical weather and then you come to snow in winter. You're like, what is this? But I think I at least I'm the kind of person that I like the people that had questions about my culture and like, how I grew up. And some people really had no idea at all how the Dominican Republic works or a third world country works at all. So they're not asking to, for being ignorant or whatever. They're asking because they really want to know, or they're just because they're completely isolated from that. And they just want a little piece of it to get knowledge and educated about it.
If I may, I had a similar experience in terms of, initially feeling quite welcome. I guess maybe for different reasons, and it's interesting how with time I actually realized how a lot of people actually don't end up feeling welcome at UR. So when I first came to UR, I like I said, I felt quite welcome and that I belonged. That's primarily because I'm from Pakistan, and when I came here, there was a small but very well-led group of Pakistanis, and in particular, so Pakistanis in particular, and South Asians in general on campus. So going back to what Najwa said, I was lucky in the fact that I had this group of people who I shared so much with. I was also accompanied by two people from my high school in Pakistan. So instantly I had a group of very close friends. So no matter what else the campus was like, I had people to go to, a place where I felt welcome and valued and supported. But that also meant that for a long time, I was quite unaware of the larger problems of social segregation that afflict our campus. I honestly felt that the reason I kept coming back to my core group of South Asian friends was because I was too lazy to venture out socially. I thought maybe this is the way it is on any US college campus. But with time, of course, I realized that UR does not, UR has some problems with its campus culture. I felt this all the more strongly when I went to Maastricht University in the Netherlands for study abroad, because at Maastricht, there were people from all over the place. And yet I felt so comfortable being around people who spoke a different language, who belonged to a different culture, who ate different food, who practiced different religions. And that's when I realized that if it weren't for my good fortune that I found a great group of South Asians on campus, I might have struggled to feel belonging at U of R, or to feel valued here. So that's something that I realized in retrospect with time, and not in my first maybe 2 years at UR.
I would love to follow Gibran and note the social segregation point that you brought up. So my experience was almost the complete opposite. My first 2 years, I didn't feel welcome at all. I remember calling home and saying, I don't know anyone and no one knows me. And I just felt very lost in the sea of students. And it's a small campus. And so it shouldn't be that easy to get lost. Specifically, most of my social problems are in the classroom. I remember my non-BIPOC, so Black, Indigenous, people of color, classmates kind of grouping with one another. And I would always be on the outside, especially if I was one of the only people of color. And so then the people of color, the multicultural people kind of huddle up and end up together, sometimes by choice, but most of the time not. And it was just so uncomfortable. And so in some of those classroom conversations, I found out more about my classmates' perspectives. I think about one of my first year seminars. One of the students said, oh yeah, I went to boarding school all of my life and I've only ever known one Black person. And I was just shocked. I just had no idea that other people had experiences that were so dissimilar to mine. And then I think about my senior year when I thought, okay, we've all been growing, we've all been learning together. And one of my classmates said, oh, I don't know about neighborhood integration, about new people moving into my neighborhood. I know everyone, I feel very safe around them. And I thought, oh my goodness, I thought we were supposed to spend this time getting to know each other better, making this campus a little bit warmer, a little bit more welcoming. But those are only two individuals and two examples. I definitely took advantage of the leadership opportunities at Richmond. I had to figure out who I was as a person and who I wanted to be. And I thought, okay, I'll just be a leader. And so that was one of the ways that I overcame not feeling like I belonged as a student there.
Yeah, that's a tough one. My own personal experience, and it kind of leads to our next question, was I came to campus early and participated in PRIO. So having that opportunity to be on campus early before everyone else, and being able to establish some folks that you had common ground with to kind of help through the general orientation process was definitely helpful for me. So I'll say to the group, what resource or program was the most impactful during your time at U of R?
I did international orientation, and it went at the same time the PRIO. So I met everyone from pre-orientation as well. So I like the best of both worlds. I have everybody that was coming from like a different country, getting acquainted to the American culture. And then I had everybody else that, was just coming already. I was like, it's pretty late. So, and one of my really good friends, she also would be PRIO. So that's where I met her. And I literally walked into her room because I heard her speaking Spanish. And it's like, are you guys speaking Spanish? What? And and we became super good friends. It was one of my bridesmaids like 4 years ago. So it's things like that. Also, I think that the sports really help as well. As I said, I did synchronized swimming, and I did it I had done it before in the Dominican Republic, and then I did it when I joined U of R, and that was really good for me. The drill instructor, great. I worked in modeling, guys, and I loved it because even though I had no idea what artsy things are, I really enjoyed it just because of so many diverse people come in and just the thoughts and things like that. That was really interesting for me. So programs like that really help, and going abroad for sure, just to get a different perspective. Even though I was already abroad, but
Any other thoughts on programs or things that were impactful for you in your experience?
Yeah, I would also have to say PRIO. And, for me, it was interesting. I came early in 2016 through the Bridge to Success program specifically for athletes. But I didn't get to do PRIO my freshman year. But, from working at Common Ground my sophomore year and having some exposure to OMA, I worked pre-orientation for 2 years. In my last year, I was a co-chair. And I think even though I didn't go through PRIO my freshman year and experience it and create that kind of cohort with classmates, as a staff member, I just remember feeling incredible and just being able to connect with, students that were first years and coming in so excited, and being able to serve as kind of a mentor, but just also be a friend and establish those relationships. And I think that to me was kind of one of the most important things, is just to create those friendships. Like I said, I was on a basketball team, so they were my friends by default and I love them all, but it was great to also, just have some experiences where, we didn't know each other before we came in, didn't meet in the summer, and we can still be friends. And I think one of the greatest aspects about PRIO is the staff members that work PRIO and the students that come in, they know how important their cohort is to them, but they also make sure to pull in people who weren't a part of PRIO. And I think that's really important, because we hear over and over again that, oh, I didn't get to do PRIO, and you all come in and look like you had so much fun, which we did have so much fun. but sometimes it seems like there's students who are left out because they didn't know about it or didn't sign up because they didn't really know what it is. And I think we emphasize, and OMA does a great job of making sure you pull in your people and make sure that they feel the same way that you did in Prio at some point during that first year and throughout the rest of your experience.
I also did Spanish in the community. I don't know if that's still a thing, but I did that and it was really good for me as well. I think if that's something you can join like past your sophomore year and up, that was really good. And I was international OA too, and that was like one of the most fun jobs I ever had, for sure. Because I still are friends with all those people too. Like it's just amazing how you keep all these connections. So.
I would just briefly say, so I was part of 2 different programs with Najwa actually. So again, being an RA was amazing. It was just naturally such a wonderful community with people, like all kinds of people, who were in a lot of ways it was good to be part of that community. But besides that, also the scholars program at Richmond, I think that's fantastic. So Najwa and I were part of that, and it was I think that was also this community that you always felt welcome in and part of. Yeah.
I think about my living learning community. My sophomore year, I did human rights and modern day slavery with Dr. Dada. And there's just something about being in hours worth of class with the same group of people who are passionate about the same subjects, and then also getting to travel with them. You get to see an entirely different side of people when you're stuck in a van and it's hot and the AC's broken and you're lost a little bit and late to the meeting. And that was just one of the best experiences. We were a pretty diverse group, and I just feel like those are some of the classmates that I admire most.
I think probably can echo many of your stories. I have, it's really been about the connections, and I think you guys have echoed that you make as part of these programs, whether or not you're a participant or a leader. And I can agree, I have several friends for who we are still friends to this day from those early days of being on campus. So I'll ask this question for the group. Have you seen changes, or did you see changes in the climate during your time as a student? And I'll add, even as an alum, if you've been back to campus.
I've been back. I almost go every year for homecoming. But well, apart from the regular structural changes everywhere, I don't think I have interacted enough with the current students to actually know what's going on. But what I see around campus, at least, I do see more diversity. Even I could be wrong, just saying, but that's what I see in my short periods of visits, like when I go. And that's definitely something I appreciate, to see, because I definitely, yes, I was that girl that was like the dark person in the room, like in a class or, in a room dorm party or whatever, like just like that. And there's those things that it's weird if you think about it. Like I didn't grow up in the United States, so I never actually thought about color much. So it's something that after you are part of the American culture, you kind of like noticed. So and you kind of miss it at the same time. You're like, oh wait, I'm the only brown person in this room. So you definitely have become more aware of that. But I also never felt like I needed to choose, like, how everybody picks their sides and whatever. I feel like, if I keep myself neutral, things will flow. And that's how I saw it, right? And I think streams have changed for sure in some ways. But, my experience wasn't always positive. Like I have a professor that couldn't say my name the entire semester. And he literally just pointed at me the entire time. He's like, you, and I was like, yay, me, like things like that. And but that's like one off, and you just need to, like, at least I learned how to, like, shut up. It's okay. One person cannot ruin everything. So things like that.
I think for me, I was asked this question like maybe 2 weeks ago, and I went back to the class, and many of which have been in school when I was a freshman, and on this call, and I just go back to the alum and the students that were there before me that I was able to watch my freshman year do all this work, and I'm familiar with half of the people on this call, and just to see some of them do the work that they did on campus, I think for me, I wanted to model that and figure out where I could, have some sort of impact. And I think there has been some change in 2016. I remember like having a first basketball game. It was like, where are the fans? And then, that's an aspect that has changed. And then, student groups have emerged. And I know being one of the co-founders of Shades of Pride, how important that has been to me, but also to hear from other students and members who are involved with Shades of Pride, an LGBTQ affinity group on campus, like what that's meant to them. And so I always go back to, the leaders that I was able to watch my freshman year, sophomore year. And, after they left, it's kind of like, all right, well, we've got to do something now. So I think, there has been change, and I'm appreciative of, multicultural students, all students really, standing up and making sure that, they're making a change in that time, but also that the change is going to have some sort of impact down the road.
I couldn't agree with your statement more. I think even when I think about my time on campus, you feel that burden of looking at those leaders that are leaving campus to be like, okay, someone has to step into those shoes and we can create change and we have the ability and the power to make change on this campus and make it more like what we would want it to be. So I would agree there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I loved what Jade said. Like, it's important, I think, for years to come that or I guess underclassmen to see upperclassmen who they can identify with in leadership roles. And it doesn't necessarily have to be strictly within multicultural spheres, if you will, intentionally multicultural spaces. So for me, I loved being an RA. I was an RA my sophomore year, my junior year, and then I became a head resident my senior year. And I remember actually I was head resident of the Gateway Apartments, and Mohammed Kuvadia, who was, Jabran and I both know him. He was the head resident of the other set of apartments on campus, UFA. And we had been friends for a while. Both were Muslim. We were like, what is going on? I was like, we're running residence life. I was like, and the Muslims are the vast minority in the school. So it was just a really awesome moment where you were like, it doesn't really, representation, it does not have to be proportional to the physical number of those students on campus. You can sort of blow yourself up and put yourself in those leadership spaces that Jay talked about, that Ivana talked about. I remember meeting Ivana. Was it through Pam, Ivana? Yes. Okay. And I remember looking up to her so much. I was like, and hearing her story about how her first 2 years were rough. My first year was really rough. And I would have never guessed it meeting her because I met her in her prime, So it's just know that things don't have to start out great for them to become great. And you can make really any space your own. It doesn't have to be one cut out for just multicultural students. We're students like anyone else. So be it research, be it residence life, a sport, find your place and then become great at it and inspire the underclassmen who might feel similarly to how Ivana felt or how I felt to do the same once they've, reached, not even once they've reached their junior, senior years. At that moment, there's literally no time limit, nothing like that. So I just want people to be able to see themselves represented in good spaces and by people who look like them.
I love that. I love the ability to make change and at the student level, right? Because it is your campus. So don't forget that. But I'll flip it the other direction and ask the panel if they can identify if there were any faculty or staff members that stick out as your biggest champions or allies while you were on campus. and what was it about that person that stuck out to you?
I think we already mentioned him, Dr. Data. Love him. Like, he's just great. he he just was always really supportive. Like, his classes were always really interesting. He was definitely a motivator, and I love that about him. He always had like that positive vibe, and that's something I really liked about him. Dr. Peebles in Spanish department, I don't know if he's still there, but he used to run the intense Spanish program. Love him. Like, he's one of my favorite people in the whole world. And oh my gosh, Dr. Haas in sociology, I know he's a little quirky here and there. He's just, you just have to get his sense of humor. Once you get that, you're fine. He's great.
I'll make this quick. I was going to say I have an entire laundry list of the amazing people that I met, and I hope I don't leave anyone off. The first few who come to mind are Dr. Crystal Hoyt in leadership, Dr. Thad Williamson, leadership, Dr. Julian Hayter, leadership, the Doctors of the Will program, which was formerly Women Involved in Living and Learning, Dr. Holly Blake and Dr. Melissa Uten, and then the entire Office of Alumni Affairs. I know Emily's on this call tonight. I worked in that office for 2 years, and I just think about the way all of the people that I named welcomed me with such open arms. And I would be absolutely remiss if I did not say that every single dining staff worker gave me a hug every time I went into D Hall and asked about my day and wanted to know what was going on. And we just built these relationships. And they're still the people that I keep up with on social media. They're the people who are in my corner. That's the thing that they all have in common. They wanted to make sure I was fine. They wanted to make sure we had a relationship. And they're just some really, really amazing people at the university. And of course, Dr. Cade and Oma and Dr. Bassesi.
I would agree with that. What Ivana said about there being so many people in the faculty and staff who are just amazing. I would say that in my own personal experience as well, all the faculty and staff members that I interacted with made me feel welcome and valued, especially speaking of my home department of physics. My professors were particularly welcoming and welcoming in the sense that I never ever felt out of place. When I was in the department, I could be as brown Pakistani guy with a Muslim name as I wanted to be, but I was there to do physics, and that's all that mattered. And my professors in the department would genuinely want to know more about me, about my culture. I remember Dr. Vidyu Lipan asking me to draw this family tree diagram while we were doing research, just so he could literally memorize what titles we use in Urdu, which is my mother tongue, to address different relatives like paternal and maternal uncles and aunts and grandparents, stuff like that. I remember there was a political occasion back in 2016, which made me feel a little unwelcome in the US, if you know what I mean, right or wrong. And one of my physics professors walked up to me that day and reminded me that I am welcome here, that I'm valued, that most of America is happy to have me here. But I would like to say here that I know that there have been people who had a different experience than mine with some of these people, for example, but purely in terms of my identity as Pakistani with a Muslim background, I felt more than welcome and valued. And the same goes for, I think, residence life. Of course, the community was fantastic in terms of the students who were in it, but also the staff members. I never felt out of place.
And I would just like to piggyback. And I think, there are so many different people. And like you said, Gibran, I think it's important to recognize that there are people who I would list on my list that maybe folks would say they didn't have that great of an experience with. And I think noting that is important, but just the impacts that, those people have is so important. And I also like to joke around that I feel like I worked at every single office on campus. And so, being in those offices, like I couldn't wait until, like, I know we didn't have our reunion. Emily's on this call. I know we didn't have our reunion, but like I look forward to each different season where I was able to work at a different office. Like I worked graduation, and like all of those people are phenomenal. I know I forgot something in my room when we had to move out this year, and the events, conferences, and support services held on to it for me rather than it being thrown out. And so like that's something that I appreciate. And I think every single office that I've stepped into, I have also made it a priority to get to know the people in those offices. So I think sometimes we can kind of get bogged down by, well, this person doesn't seem that interested in me, but I think it's also on us to really try to establish those relationships. So I would send all the emails in the world, can we meet? Even if I didn't really have time. But the 15 minutes that I could meet with somebody in an office just to talk about their experience or just learn some more were really impactful. And the one person, I know my list is very similar to Ivana's. And so all of the people that she said retweet, but I think my first year seminar with Dr. Lydia Roddy, I don't know if folks are familiar with her, believe she's still in the French department. But I have never taken a French class. My FYS was called Friendship, Love, and Desire. And it was such an interesting class. And I think that was the first place where I was like, okay, I'm on this campus. I've been out in my community for, years prior to coming to University of Richmond. And she kind of really just made me feel comfortable opening up in class. And I think that, really was the first point where I was like, all right, this is cool. I can do what I need to do. I can feel comfortable in this space because of that one particular class. And I really, I email her every now and then. I wanted to just thank her publicly for that, because I think it's so important when you have all of these different intersecting identities to be able to walk into a space and immediately feel comfortable with that professor and who's making it known that you will feel comfortable in this class.
I love that each of you have these experiences that are far reaching across campus, and that these experiences where you're welcomed and you're allowed to be your authentic self, because I think that's extremely important. We're in a bit of space of transition. I think this year has been a year of transition for a lot of things. So I will ask this question, probably slightly selfishly, because I'm interested in you all's your answers. But we're about to have a transition within the next few years with our president of the university. So I ask you, what do you think are the most important priorities, qualities, and skills for the next president of U of R?
I can jump on here. I think I love Dr. Crutcher. So if he's watching this, hello, Dr. Crutcher. I think, the next president has to be personable and like have a complete interest in students and what they're up to. I remember seeing Dr. Crutcher come to basketball games and wait after the game to speak with me. And I know that was something that was so important to me. Both him and Dr. Betty Crutcher were there in the stands. I waved to them before the game. So I think, really one of the things that was most impactful to me is knowing that these people were, supporting me in any aspect. And when I saw them on campus, that I could say hello and I could stop them from wherever they were going just to say hi or tell them about how my day was going. So I think that person just really has to be visible and really want to get to know students.
Yeah, and on that note, so Dr. Crutcher and I were freshmen together. That's what he used to like to say, because he started the year I started. And one of the first things he did was he's like established this small group of students. I don't remember what it was called. It was like the mentoring program, something, I don't know. But him and Dr. Crutcher ran it. And so once a month, maybe it was like a small group of, when I started, 10 girls, 10 guys that would like meet with the president and Dr. Crutcher, and we would talk about current events. We would talk about what was like the state of campus. Any like the one book that was selected every year, we would have our own one book discussions. And so the topics varied month to month, but it was very focused on like the student experience. And I don't know how they chose these students. I remember getting an email like right before I started my freshman year, and I was like, how do they know me? I was like, I'm not even there yet. But they did a great job, because I got to know so many people I wouldn't have gotten to know otherwise. And like people that represented very different spaces on campus. So you had student athletes represented, you had people from like the sciences, people from the arts, people from humanities, so different academic interests, different hobbies, different backgrounds. And so the conversation was always like very high level, very informative, just a phenomenal way for like us to get to know the president, but also for us to get to know each other. And like similarly to Jade, I actually felt like I knew him and his wife, and like we got like when I would see them on campus, I would give them a hug. And like Dr. Betty Crutcher still owns like a pair of socks that I got her for like a holiday Yankee swap or something. So it just is amazing how connected you can feel to someone who before that can seem so like, oh, like they're in their own spot, like they're the president, you don't know them. But like I think he made an active effort for that to not be the case. And I'd really, really like to see his successor keep up like a similar trend, either with that same group of students or something else that he or she comes up with.
I have to second Jade and Nejwa and round out my laundry list with the Crutchers. Same exact experience as Nejwa. They're just a really, really amazing couple. And I think their leadership at the University of Richmond has shown us how important both diversity and representation are. We had two people they're not leaving yet, thankfully, and Dr. Crutcher's still going to teach. We have two people who want the best for the entire university. And I think that when I think about our future, that's what we have to keep in mind. So listening to those students' voices, listening to the alumni voices, making sure that we know where we are now. So we're still talking about that social segregation a little bit, and bridging in those gaps so that we can make sure we get to where we want to be. So honestly, I would want like a Dr. Crutcher Jr.
I don't know if that's possible, but I'm definitely holding out hope for that. So staying in our theme of transition, think back, or maybe not so long ago, but think to your time of transitioning post-grad. What was the hardest thing about that transition and moving into that post-grad life? What have you done to cope with that? How have you created community? And how have you made your kind of stamp on the world, so to speak?
I would say because I spent the last, 2 months of my senior year at home, I think that the transition did look a little different. I played my last basketball game on March 7th, and I was home March 8th, not really knowing what the rest of the year was going to look like. I didn't expect to not come back. So once we got news that, we weren't coming back to campus, that was a whole nother thing for me to try to process. But luckily, I knew I was going to be going to VCU Center for Sport Leadership. So I felt kind of comfortable in my next steps, but I still felt like, oh my goodness, I haven't been able to write all my thank you cards and say thank you to all the different people in the different offices that I worked at. So it did feel like I didn't have much closure from that aspect. But, I've been very grateful for, folks that I've worked with to reach out and say that we're here for you. And I think that's really helped the transition. And now being at the Center for Sport Leadership and working for the city, have just kind of, I just still go back to my time at U of R, and I think I was really prepared to finish the end of my school year in the middle of a pandemic. I don't know when it's not going to be the middle, so that's the interesting thing. But I think, the University of Richmond prepared me. And I remember, once the gym started to open back up, I was actually still here, and I saw Dr. Crutcher, and I thanked him and just said, like, I wish we could have had graduation, but I'm sitting here right now looking at you, and I'm thankful for all of the things that, you have done in my past, few years at the university to make sure that I am prepared for this transition. So I think, just thinking back, the different mentors and leaders that I've had and got to watch throughout my time prepared me to be able to have a better transition than I thought.
Go ahead. Okay. So I guess I would start by saying that my time at University of Richmond, despite all the lows, was the best 4 years of my life so far. And I think for me, I'm an extrovert and I want to be around people all the time. One of the big reasons that was the case was because I was with people all the time. And so definitely having to say goodbye to all my friends was very hard. Going into post-grad life, because I was not just, moving from like Richmond to like DC or something. I was moving to Toronto. So, but anyway, so basically like a huge drop in my social capital. And despite, all the vices of UR's campus culture that, we just mentioned a little, it felt great personally to be surrounded all the time by people of the same age with similar interests. And it's still not so bad considering I'm still technically a student because I'm doing a PhD who spends a lot of time with other students, but it's not really the same. For one, graduate school is suddenly much smaller with a lot fewer people, and everyone's grown up. Everyone's got responsibilities and bills to pay. It's a whole mess, and so it's been a struggle to make friends like I did in college. I guess where in college I didn't have to try hard to make long-lasting connections. Now I just have to put in more effort into building social connections. It's basically a mix of coming to terms with the fact that all my closest friends are far away now, and putting in deliberate time and effort into making those social connections the same way I put in time and effort into doing other things that matter in life. And so to that end, here at University of Toronto, the Department of Astronomy and Astrophysics is actually a very welcoming place. There's a nice and warm, small community of grad students. So I automatically have the benefit of being part of this community. I've developed some good relationships with fellow grad students, but I think I should and I want to make friends beyond the grad student community too. So that's been my story post graduation in the past year or so.
Oh, well, when I graduated, so I took until August to find a job after graduation. And I remember I had like 5 jobs in college, guys. So I know it's random, all the things I'm telling you. But I worked in the library my 4 years of college too. And I did have a library family. That's what I call them. And they were there every single time I was practicing for my interviews. They ran through my resumes. They were just really supportive and it helped me move every single year. They were amazing. But I definitely appreciated that, and it was really hard for me to say goodbye to them because I did have Richmond was the first place I called home after moving from another country, and it definitely has a place in my heart. I will tell you, DC is an extension of Richmond. There are a lot of people from Richmond go just move to DC. They just get jobs in DC. And I work for Booz Allen Hamilton right now, and we're based in McLean, Virginia. And there's not many Richmond alumni there, but everybody else in DC, Deloitte, PwC, all those people. So it did help going to a area that had a lot of alumni, because then you get to meet, to keep kind of meeting with your friends. You don't see that you don't see them anymore, at least that they moved to New York or something, and you're definitely not gonna see them for a little while. But I definitely like that. When I lived in Miami last year, I was part of the regional volunteering, alumni volunteering. So, I can keep that socializing with the UFR, that bonding with somebody else. And that was nice. And you could also get to know other people's experiences as well. And I also did an internship with the State Department in Chile. And that was one of the best jobs I ever had in my life as well. And, but that's something that I feel like if I didn't have all the background in international studies, the Spanish drill, all those things that I did before that, I don't think I would have gotten that. So I definitely think Richmond definitely prepared me for a lot, because I know it definitely prepared my resume for getting out of college for sure. So, because I just did so much, but I'm also those kind of people that just like to do everything. So I value my experience in Richmond so much, because it taught me a lot about myself, about other people. And how people perceive me, and how, you know, they just perceive something that they don't know. And some people are curious, some people are more like, I don't know, but you know, it's also how you balance it out. So.
Well, thank you all for your perspectives. It's amazing how quickly our time goes. But thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you all for joining us today as well. We hope that we've gotten to some of your questions, and that we've given you great advice. But please know that we're here to support you, both our fellow alumni and our current students, as you guys move forward. Both Emily Saunders and from the Alumni Office, and Morgan Russell in the Office of Multicultural Affairs, affectionately known as OMA, will provide their contact info in the follow-up email that you'll receive. If you have any questions or ideas regarding future alumni student multicultural programming, please be sure to reach out to them. And lastly, make sure that you follow and stay connected with the Alumni Office, as well as OMA, as well as Urban, I'll throw that in there, and on social media to find out about future upcoming events. So thank you again, and we hope that we'll be able to connect again with you soon. Have a great one. Thanks for joining us.